You mentioned the price of war. This is the price of peace.
That's a big number for an old friend.
You were friends with my father, not me.
At the heart of Chicago is a Flynn organization led by the manipulative Walter Flynn, and in Season 2 he's facing a multifaceted crisis that threatens not just his organization but also his family, which he only has himself to blame for. We've also been introduced to a new player from Dublin in Brendan Doyle, who's after a big number for the chaos which ended in the death of the Four Horsemen in Season 1, which really has put Walter Flynn in a huge situation. He also made a desperate move with a Bad Batcher product. In trying to recover his relationships, the only thing he's managed to do is make them worse. So is it too late for the Flynn family organization? Intertwined is also a sibling rivalry, which just adds to the complex relationships, which will no doubt hinder the Flynn organization even further. So they find themselves at breaking point from every single angle. So in this video, we will be exploring the Flynn family dynamic, Walter's woes, and Claudia and Vic's next moves, as well as Walter Flynn versus Dublin in Power Book 4 Force Season 2. Now, just to lay the foundation of this video, we will be taking it back to the beginning of Season 1, where we were introduced to the Flynn organization. At the beginning of their story, we were given some insight into the power struggle that we were about to see. Walter's vision and the way he runs his organization set the tone for the story for the Flynns. He had a set way and a tradition that he abides to like law, but it wasn't just because he was stubborn. In Season 1 Episode 2, in a conversation with Vic, he mentioned he was going to continue running it his way because that's the way he likes it, but also because that's the way Ireland wants it.
Continue to do it my way, because that's how I like it. And that's the way Ireland wants it. You cross them, well, the consequences will be fucking fatal.
Now, the key part of this conversation isn't just the fact that Ireland are the ones who Walter answers to, but if they cross Ireland, then the consequences would be fatal. Now, towards the end of Season 1, Walter Flynn did approach Ireland for the help, and they sent the Four Horsemen. The idea was that they would come to Chicago, help Walter Flynn deal with the war against Tommy Egan, and then head back. But the problem that Walter Flynn has, Tommy dispatched of the Four Horsemen with ease. So seeing as the Four Horsemen went to Chicago and never returned, Ireland want answers. Now here's where Brendan Doyle comes into the picture. There's a lot of history between Walter Flynn, Ireland, and Brendan Doyle, or rather Walter Flynn and Brendan Doyle's father. In this conversation, it was revealed that Walter Flynn knew Doyle's father. In the past, Walter helped him with the situation, and he thought maybe Doyle could help him repay the favor by calling it even with the Four Horsemen. Unfortunately, Doyle was in no mood to make a deal. That deal that Walter made was with his father, not him. He's running the operation from Dublin a little different. He wants a big number for peace, and even though we don't know what the number is, the price for peace is huge. I think this was the moment Walter Flynn knew he couldn't do this without his kids. If he could, he wouldn't have approached them, but I think it's pretty clear Walter Flynn has his back against the wall with Ireland, and so he really needs them. Now, the reception that Walter Flynn was going to receive from Claudia and Vic was always going to be frosty, especially because it was revealed Walter Flynn was behind the manipulation surrounding Claudia, Vic, and Gloria's death. But although this conversation showed Walter Flynn needed his kids, I do feel like they needed Walter as well. Tommy is out for revenge for Liliana's death, and Claudia knows she's going to be the one in the firing line at some point. So they do need to get ahead of the game and take Tommy out before Tommy takes Claudia out. But she can't do this without Walter Flynn's help and protection, and the same really goes for Vic. At times, he also needs his father's help, especially after his reckless behavior. We saw him being arrested for armed robbery. Now, despite them coming together around how they need each other, it seemed like Claudia and Vic weren't convinced, and rightly so. As I mentioned, the only reason why Walter Flynn was here because he needed his kids and they needed to show a united front against Dublin. So something we shouldn't have been surprised at was Claudia making yet another move behind Walter Flynn's back with Dahlia. Her and Vic toasted to a new partnership, but this went completely tits up after Tommy's quick counter move. He had JP leak the formula for Dahlia, which pretty much rendered it useless on the streets, which also resulted in the death of Dr. Williams. With Dahlia no more, we saw this sibling rivalry reignite, which really didn't take too long. I think it was a given from what we saw in Season 1, the Flynns will never be on the same page. But one person has and probably will always hold on to some hope is Uncle Paulie. Uncle Paulie really is a great importance to the Flynn organization. He's a much needed voice of reason, and he's stuck by Walter Flynn through thick and thin, despite his manipulation and frankly shambolic decision making. And that's what I'm gonna call it. His decision making has been shambolic, and he only has himself to blame for the situation he currently finds himself in. That situation is his accounts has been run down to the ground. He doesn't have enough to pay Brendan Doyle, and that's why Walter Flynn was making a business deal with Michael for a bad batch of 10,000 pills. Now, what came to mind was how Diamond's Bad Batcher product killed many in the streets, so could history repeat itself? I think if Walter Flynn wasn't in a desperate situation, he wouldn't have accepted this deal, and I am sure the look on Uncle Paulie's face, he wanted to tell him to think about it as well. But I think we all know by now, sometimes getting through to Walter Flynn is like running into a brick wall. He built his organization from scratch, he runs it the way he wants to, and he'll continue to do so until his dying breath. Now, no doubt Brandon Doyle is smelling blood within the Flynn organization at this moment in time. I think he wants Walter Flynn to fail so he can take over in Chicago, because why not? Throughout history, we've seen plenty of characters making power moves to take out the leader, which then leaves a power vacuum. So if there's no Flynn organization, then up steps Brendan Doyle for Ireland or someone else. And he told Claudia if Walter Flynn doesn't start changing his ways or bringing in more money, then they will chop his head off. Now here's where I do want to bring it back to Claudia Flynn and another reference to season 1.
So you think because you beat your brother in a couple of games of chess when you were kids, you're ready for the street?
No doubt, Claudia is a chess player, she's ambitious, power hungry, and she wants to lead the Flynn organization. As she said many times in season 1, Vic is already, which was even more evident from episode 2 through his reckless actions. Walter Flynn also gave her the opportunity to run point on this new deal with Michael, only to use it to get through to Vic and then rip it away from her. This is where it goes back to the gender dynamic within the Flynn family organization. I don't think they'd let Claudia lead even if she was the best person because she's a woman. Although let's not doubt her capabilities, I do think given the right resources and Uncle Paulie by her side, I do think she could become a very good leader. In season 1, she showed that she doesn't let segregation come in between business, and a few times she had the right idea about how they could pull the Flynn organization out of ruins, but again, she will never get the chance because she's not a man. So for as long as she works under Walter Flynn, she'll always be given jobs he considers only for females. So with Claudia, he's just broken the last bit of trust and hope he had with his daughter. Dublin aren't happy with him, and despite Vic coming on board to the Flynn organization, he's done with his father, especially when Gloria died. His plan is to dismantle Walter Flynn's operation from the inside. Now how he does this is yet to be seen, but I just can't see a way out of this for Walter Flynn. He briefly mentioned that he doesn't have too long left in episode 2, which is in reference to him suffering cancer, so there's still also that issue. If he doesn't go out in a blaze of glory, then the cancer will kill him, and I think he realizes he's on borrowed time. Now if he started with season 2 with a change of heart and listened to Uncle Paulie, Vic, and Claudia, then he could have stood a chance in building back up. For example, all he had to do with Claudia was to tell her, look, I know you're the right person to lead this organization, Vic isn't cut out for it at this moment in time. My hands are tied because of Dublin. All he had to do from day 1 was have an open and honest conversation with both Vic and Claudia. But despite everything that happened in season 1, he still continued to manipulate them. So he's in a position which I do think he deserves with the walls closing in. I also briefly mentioned he knows he's on borrowed time, so you also get the feeling that he wants a fight, he's looking for a war. In episode 1 he told Uncle Paulie his father used to say, if you want peace then prepare for war. We then had Vic saying it seems like he's looking for a war and he refuses to be a pawn in his chess game. So what is Walter Flynn's game? Does he know his time is up and does he want to create one hell of a shitstorm on the way out with Dublin? Because I wouldn't put it past him. Vic once said in season 1 his father would love to go out in a blaze of glory. And I really wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens versus Dublin. So drop all your thoughts down below and let me know how you see this playing out for the Flynns. And as always, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you next time.